Back when people in Moscow could not tell my foreignness by just a couple of lines that I said, I was afraid of those people. My only language was identical to theirs, mechanically forced onto a mold by a corrupt educational system. In that language, attached to the new words that I learned, there were assigned meanings to be expressed with them, and threats about what I should never dare think of expressing. I am 15. As I carefully walk through a crowded room, I calculate the way each person sees me. Before I notice, my body inflates in size. I reach and pull my arms and hips together so that I can hide them behind my crooked back. The steps of my glossy black heels second my heartbeat. Everyone in the room can hear. My glance rests for a long time on rows of five-story buildings outside, the signature of last century's nightmare. The trauma of it still haunts my country. You can hear it in our words. The humble rain knocks on the surface of my world as if asking to talk in private. I agree and look out. Time spills and I am now hypnotized by the different shades of blue reflected on the buildings outside. It is a very special hue of blue that can only be seen in cities, perhaps only in Moscow. White walls of my panel houses that are the same across the country, the special city rain, and the warm dim lights inside all factor into the creation of this shade of blue. The rain beats out the invitation. I allow my body wrapped in festive black fabric to sink in the corner of the couch near the window. I start hypnotizing the fork with its dramatically perfect reflection of the ceiling. Straighten up, my mother tells me in her special ice-cold way just when I reach the comfortable level of invisibility. I start seeing myself from the outside and I prefer not to look that way. My grandfather starts slowly and absent-mindedly turning the spoon. Distracted by that, my gaze concentrates on the cream tablecloth with the matching napkins and dark red insertions on them. Our hands, that are a slight shade darker than the tablecloth, form an implied triangle. Most of the dinner was spent in silence. A special know-how of my family. The secret code states that the small talk is perverse and silence is sacred. Against the popular parenting mantra, I have always been strongly encouraged to think deeply before asking any questions about the world. Lack of eloquence in speech can result in an evening so loud I can hear it weeks past. After a while, the arbitrary separations between evenings blur, and they merge into years of buzzing indiscernible noise. We pay a lot of attention to words. The school is good. Nothing to worry about. It's all good. What did she say? He says while very slowly and smoothly pointing at me with his cold crumbled hand. She repeats my words. She is sitting very upright, her lips slightly pursed. Only after these words he slowly turns his wide open light blue eyes to her. Loudly and slowly, with frequent repetition, I enunciate the rest of the protocol. Friends are okay, and I will work harder. Five-story buildings, the monuments of totalitarianism that would soon be replaced by manifestations of yet another exhausting regime, compose a serene view outside. Do the people who brought us to the state have a language of their own? That question offers an opportunity for my imagination to win the game over the hum of reality, and so my transformation begins. Accidentally, I sink out of my 15-year-old awkward body made out up of all these inarticulate and unwanted hills, bumps, and hair, and my mind tries to pour me into a body I know exists just tens of kilometers away, behind a red brick wall, and so my legs and arms extend and thin. My skin crumbles and gets darker in patches. My head is shaved so very gently. My hair turns gray and falls out on top. My suit, hiding a bulletproof vest, fits me perfectly. Neither I nor you have ever touched a fabric like that. Now the face. After the necessary genetic phases, it changes. My decrepit skin is stretched by the flow of cold buttocks, the most expensive there is. My face is photographed and reproduced on millions of surfaces. Dirty billboards of my land, glossy covers and sticky pages of magazines, propaganda television, internet memes, and the framed portraits that hang in every administrative closet of this federation. When my appearance is rendered correctly, I try to move my shoulders, extend my fingers. Am I alone? Do they ever let me be alone? The phone rings, I pick it up, and the illusion ruins. To think that someone like me would have to use the same language as to think that someone like him would have to use the same language as me is impossible. The possibilities to differ from the assigned words were dramatically less in his Soviet childhood than in mine. After that, decades of bureaucratic lingo have washed over his mind, inserting its artificial Kafkaesque formulas. I allow him for a certain taste, which would mean a degree of love for poetry. All those rhymed lines soaked in pain and belief in light, in his language must cohabitate with the vulgar jokes he shares with the public, and murder orders he gives out to control it. Years later, when I left that country, I found my ultimate freedom and power in the area in between languages, the linguistic space that I constructed myself. But he, who is tied to the same people and the same protocol, does he have less freedom and power than I do? The idyllic smell of food is in strong opposition to the scene of in front of me. My grandfather's hands move slowly according to the axis that doesn't quite correspond to a skillful way of consuming food. The fork that I was just piercing with my eyes is in his large hands now, cold and uncooperative. His enormous brows that curl up onto themselves are now slightly brought together. This is one of the few facial expressions his face ever gifted to me. He wins the fight to pick up the necessary pieces of the food, but they fall midway to the mouth, on the buttons of his freshly ironed shirt. All of my muscles tense and get cold when I see the speed and abruptness of my mother's hand gestures. She cleans up the mess.